We've got Wichita Police Chief Gordon Ramsay here with us today to talk about his department's 2017 accomplishments and what he would like to do in 2018. Chief, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start off with what you guys got done in 2017.
Well, 2017 was a busy year. We worked on reestablishing the traffic unit. We got a grant to bring back motorcycles for the first time since the early 2000s, with the hopes of making our streets a little safer. Probably one of the most frequent complaints I receive as chief is on neighborhood traffic issues and speed. So we'll be deploying these motorcycles to areas where we have high accident rates and receive high percentage of complaints.
I just wanted to ask you about the weekly meetings that your bureaus are holding where they're educating people about what's going on in those areas.
Well, there's a couple things we're doing. Internally, we do a weekly meeting to look at crime hotspots, problem people, problem locations, and talk about strategies to address it so that they don't continue on and on and on. That's one of them. Otherwise, we continue to work on community engagement. That is a priority of mine, to make sure that we are out meeting with our community members and ensure that we're policing with their consent. That is, that we are in line with their expectations and in line with what issues they're having in their neighborhood, and that we're focusing on those. 2017, we also noticed early on that we had an increase in drive-by shootings. So we revamped a violent crimes response team, and for the summer months they focused on our dangerous offenders, those that were out there committing violent acts, and they had such an impact. Our shootings diminished significantly, drive-by shootings and gang-related shootings. We ended the year with about a 3% decline in drive-by shootings from the year prior. That was so successful. Actually, we are working into 2018 where they're going to be a permanent change with those violent crimes teams, working with the gang unit and the drug unit, because they're all connected. Our hope is that we will continue to push those numbers downward as we move forward.
Can you talk a little bit more about exactly what they did or how that strategy worked?
Instead of focusing on, like say an area or a neighborhood, the offenders were identified, and they were, we worked at addressing them through probation. We worked at addressing them through the criminal justice system. We worked with families in some cases to try and get some intervention. We really focused on them with their behavior, and if they continued their violent behavior, we really monitored them and held them accountable for their actions. So it was a targeted approach where we identified those that were committing the violence and then went after them to ensure that this violence act stopped.
And so then this year they'll just keep building upon that.
Correct, yes. We will again continue to focus on those that are dealing in drugs and guns, and that those violence acts will be investigated thoroughly by the department because we've seen, as we saw with this group, when we focused on that, we saw decrease in violent crime.
I know you guys are also looking at some new tactics for dealing with the mentally ill.
Correct. We continue to see increase in gun crimes. The increase in mental health really is falling on the shoulders of the police department, where the expectations for us continue to grow. And it's always of great concern to me and the community when an individual suffering from mental illness is hurt at the hands of police. So one, we've been increasing our training in dealing with de-escalation with those with mental health. We have more and more officers that have received extensive training on dealing with those that are in crisis through mental illness, as well as just basic mental health first aid, where all department members have now been trained minimally in that. So we continue to focus on the training there, but also our tactics and dealing with people with weapons, particularly those that are suicidal. So we introduced in 2016, we outfitted all sergeants' cars with beanbag shotgun rounds, as well as several foam round 40 millimeter guns called less than lethal, right, where the likelihood of using these tools are much less likely than harming them than a firearm. And there are 4 cases where people have edged weapons, knives, or other weapons instead of the tool of just a gun. So what we have seen since we've done it, in collaboration with the tactics as well as the weapons now, we have seen in many cases, I think we've up to 12 now, where those less than lethal weapons have been used on people in suicidal cases with weapons held against themselves. And they've been resolved with minimal injuries to those individuals. There's a successful outcome. So we will continue to expand those. We have 18 more 40 millimeter rounds with the foam, for the foam guns coming in February, and we're going to expand them to officers so that they will have other tools other than just their guns.
So I know you guys have also had some success with your nuisance property ordinance.
The one thing that we've dealt with for a while in Wichita is we go back to the same properties over and over again. And there was no tools available for our officers to successfully address these problem properties. And officers were frustrated, neighbors were frustrated. So a year ago, the council, with unanimous approval, gave us a nuisance ordinance which focused on these problem properties where police are continually responding to for behavior-related issues. And what it does is it allows us to charge the owner or manager that are supposed to be managing the property or own it for our time there, after a period of working with them to abate the nuisance. And from what I hear on the street, it's working phenomenally. The officers have embraced it, and it's had a tremendous amount of success in dealing with problem properties.
And let's talk now about what you hope to do in 2018.
Well, in 2018, obviously, crime reduction. That is, a number one goal for me. We still deal with, property crimes that occur too often. We deal with gun violence that occurs too often. So our focuses will be on the prolific offenders, those individuals that are responsible for the majority of our crime. We see a trend in burglaries, say, where they're up 1 week substantially. Oftentimes it's one person. We have a lot of one-person crime sprees in the city that are responsible for a significant amount of crime. So we will continue to focus and work harder on focusing on these habitual offenders and making sure they're held accountable so that they don't continue to victimize our community.
What's a good way, if somebody's having an issue, for them to connect with police officers in their neighborhoods?
The community engagement piece is that our officers are at community meetings throughout the week, whether it be through district advisory boards or neighborhood meetings. That's one way. We also have officers assigned to every beat in the city that are responsible for addressing issues. So you can find information online as to who your beat officer is, or you can call your local station and ask. But the bottom line is we don't want people to be frustrated by what they perceive as lack of police response or concerns who to call. Call us and we'll help connect you with an officer that can help you. That's why we're here.
All right. Chief, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching.